Hey everybody, happy Saturday to you. Today is Saturday, June 3rd, 2023, and another day in the
The world
discussion
can sometimes
regarding
feel like a
the Oakland
very big
Athletics
place,
attempt
especially
to
to our furry
move
loved ones.
to
Whether the spirit of
Las
the place
Vegas.
takes you someplace new.
And this takes a backward look at what happened during the process, but actually it's based on a more recent communication from the East Oakland Stadium Alliance. Now, if you're not aware, the East Oakland Stadium Alliance, it is a subset of the nonprofit Pacific Maritime Shipping Association that is a consortium of several shipping clients that run commodities through the Port of Oakland and have terminals at the Port of Oakland and operations at or near the Port of Oakland. And they were hired because they were in opposition. Well, first of all, they existed ahead of the Athletics' attempt to build at Howard Terminal and acted because they believed that their rights and responsibilities and needs were not particularly addressed by the Athletics in the planning of Howard Terminal. That's a whole nother story. So they hired or asked their or Mike Jacob to spearhead the Stadium Alliance effort against Howard Terminal. They were specific in saying they wanted the Athletics to stay in Oakland, but build their new ballpark at the Coliseum and not at Jack London Square. And so, in their latest effort to advance that point of view, even as the Athletics are working to move to Las Vegas, they put out this email which reads the A's have made quite a splash in the news recently, with much of today's baseball conversation concerning the team's efforts to secure public dollars for a 9-acre Vegas ballpark. But many are still wondering what happens if John Fisher's Nevada plans end up falling through. Despite some speculation about a possible A's return to the negotiating table in Oakland, the entitlements process at Howard Terminal remains daunting. While the organization did check a handful of boxes before turning its attention exclusively to Las Vegas, this graphic demonstrates just how many obstacles still stand in the way of a ballpark development at Howard Terminal. And right at that, they have a link which shows, well, yeah, this graphic. And the graphic, if you have a look at it, looks like kind of a Rube Goldberg machine on steroids. And it presents what is entitled The Long and Bumpy Road Ahead for the A's Ballpark at Howard Terminal. And it writes the Howard Terminal project approval process seems simple, but the EIR is just the first step. And then it goes through 9 different steps until it claims the current status is City Council votes to certify final EIR, which was done. And then it goes to an additional, from that point, 18 different steps that are to be done, and including feasibility study, economic impact report, community benefits agreement, and other steps as well. But what this outlines in total is the simple fact that, first of all, Oakland Mayor Shang Tao's claim that Howard Terminal is entitled, in other words, it was put in a position where the Athletics could build on it right now, is wrong. It's not. And the infographic reads that only after the Howard Terminal Stadium and Luxury Development, as they call it, receives project approvals from 15 different state, local, regional, and federal agencies can it break ground. And so it would take a number of years. What this does not include is the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District legislation. It mentions it and presents it as an option. Now, that's not the East Oakland Stadium Alliance saying that, in their opinion, it's an option. What Mike Jacob told me was this is how the city treated it, and he's right. It runs completely afoul of what is called SB 293 Skinner, which is the enabling legislation for Howard Terminal that allows the city to use tax increment financing, and is still active to this day. It was put in place after I explained on the 4th of April of 2017 to Oakland President DeCavo that he wasn't going to get approval for a ballpark unless he built affordable housing in the Las Vegas context, and that he would need tax increment financing. Cabo swore up and down that public money, as he put it, wasn't available. I said, no, actually, that's not true. And I presented to him the father of all enhanced infrastructure financing district legislation law versions in California, SB 628 Beal, after Jim Beal, who was in San Jose, was. And he took that, worked with Nancy Skinner and Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, and then Assemblyman and now California Attorney General Rob Bonta, and formed SB 293 Skinner. If you read SB 293 Skinner from top to bottom, start to finish, it lays out a process not dissimilar from the one that the Las Vegas Stadium Authority and other public authorities have established to complete large-scale public-private partnerships. The difference, however, is that SB 293 Skinner was designed specifically for Howard Terminal, specifically, and called for the establishment of public financing authority. And if that were done early on, as I had begged the city to do, then the responsibility for the development agreement could have been transferred to the public financing authority along with bonding capability, and taken a lot of the weight off the city council, streamline the effort, and put it on a faster track. But this is a slow track that we're on right now. And so what Mike Jacob has and his team at PMSA have presented is not only accurate, it's frightening, and it presents that the public hasn't been told the truth about, and continues to not be told the truth about, Howard Terminal and the athletics. Now you would say, what am I in favor of? I'm in favor of the city getting the process right for a change. Folks, this is the first time that after many owners of the athletics have threatened to move the athletics, an owner has actually done something and worked to try to move the athletics in earnest. And the basic problem is that Oakland is over politicized. We're seeing it right now in how Las Vegas handles the effort. You don't hear from the mayor of Las Vegas. You don't hear from council members from Las Vegas. You don't hear much at all from county supervisors. Even different from the Raiders issue, because we had SNTIC, the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Act committee, or Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee, which became the act. But that organization was led by then Clark County Commissioner and Chairman Steve Sisolak, who later became governor of Nevada. But even then, the cast of characters you heard from was from a wide variety of operations and occupations in Las Vegas and Clark County and Nevada. For example, the casino representatives and Shel Nadelson and Stephen Wynn. And then you had heard from, of course, the culinary workers and union and people like Tommy White of the 872 Union Local 872 organization, and a number of people representing other businesses, Kevin White representing African American businesses, Ken White, I'm sorry, I represent African American businesses. I can go on and on and on. There was a fair number, a large number of people you heard from. By contrast, in the Oakland context, Strong Mayor has encouraged the mayor to present herself, in this case, and in the case of Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, but in also other cases, and as the and starting with Jerry Brown, who put in Measure X and got the voters to back it, put themselves front and center as the face of the project. So again, what happens when you have a change in who's mayor? You have a change in politics. We've had people now who campaign not in full support of Howard Terminal, even as much as they said they were in support of the Athletics. Now, those people are in charge, but because of that, the Athletics' confidence in the ability of the city to get this project done went down to almost zero. Almost zero. And during the negotiations and during the discussions that the Athletics realized they were at Groundhog's Day. The same conversations they were having regarding affordable housing, regarding community benefits back in 2019, 2018, and 2019 were continuing through 2021, 2022, 2023, and seemingly without end. The city also relied on a faulty consultant report by Century Urban, which only used 20 of the 45 years of bonding period for the bond issue. And yet that was not spelled out in the report. You actually had to do the math presented in the report by the data they presented to figure out that's what they did without explanation. And I called Century Urban to respond to this several times. I sent an email. I never received a response either from Century Urban. When I asked the city, and when I asked city council members, they would say, well, and I will say that former Oakland City Councilman mayoral candidate Lauren Taylor had said that, get this, those tax increment financing numbers were considered confidential. And I said, council member, that's public money, all right? Hey, Yoha, how you doing? Good morning, good morning, good morning to you as well. Good morning. That's public information. And so public information should not be hidden from the public, and yet that's what you are saying that you are doing. And because it's in closed session and he's a novice, apparently Lauren didn't consider that he should make the case to that this is public money and that people should know what the negotiating points are regarding how much tax increment revenue there will be. But that's been the city's MO going all the way back to when I asked to present what tax increment financing is to a group of people at the Chinatown town hall that Oakland District 2 Councilmember Nikki Fortunato Bass held on the 20th of November of 2019. Veronica Cummings told me, who has been a long mainstay staffer on this project, focusing on community benefits, that they didn't want the information out there. And I said, why? And she says, well, that's something we'll have to discuss over lunch. Well, we never had that lunch to discuss it. She never called to set it up or to follow up. And so that information as to what their thinking is, and there can't be a sound reason for it, from my judgment, given my 37 years in this tax increment financing revenue calculation business, that I can think of. But the bottom line is the city has been mum about it until the project manager, who was hired March of 2019, Molly Mayburn, had said in a live stream with the county regarding the term sheet, you remember back in 2021, said that there was a present value of 400 million, but didn't present the stream because the stream has never been presented. Now, if it's a present value of 400 million, then the question is, if you're using Century Urban's calculations, you're only using part of the 45-year bonding period, not the whole. And again, there was never an explanation for that. What does that mean if you're the Athletics? It means that the city is not telling you how much tax income financing revenue can actually be realized for the project. They were deliberately, I charge the city of Oakland, once presented with this information by me, didn't react, didn't change it, didn't follow up to have a presentation to show what the numbers look like or should look like. They were content to not show a larger figure, and I believe that was deliberate. I believe that rather than say, hey, look, we have about $800 million we can bond off of, and that we could take $500 million of that $800 million and use it for community benefits, which they could do. Because remember, there was never a price tag attached to the community benefits plan. Some people say they were, but every time I ask for it, I don't get it. If in a public area, an arena, when you're asking for numbers that should be readily available, if they're not readily available, you should raise that as a concern. I have many times. No one knows what the price tag is, and as someone else said, they really didn't do it, which is finally the truth that I got from at least one person who was involved in the community benefits process. All of this is maddening if you're the developer, and then you are pushed into arguments regarding offsite infrastructure, which, if you read SB 293 Skinner, chapter and verse, guess what, folks? They are not arguments. SB 293 Skinner allows that, and I'll go and pull up that legislation. In fact, I'll do it right now so that I can read for you what is said there, and so you can have a better understanding of how badly, really, the city has handled, and arguably illegally, this situation, such that arguably it would even block them from, well, considering a lawsuit if they are so inclined to do so. Now, prepare, folks, because this is going to get a little bit more complicated than it is right now. But I am trusting that you are of the appropriate intellectual capacity to absorb what I'm about to present to you, because I know you are. You wouldn't be a Zenster if you weren't. You wouldn't be a fan of this. And so I know this isn't for everybody, but it should be for everybody. Okay, SB 293 Skinner. This is Senate Bill 293, Chapter 762, an act to add Section 5339582 to the government code relating to infrastructure financing districts, okay? And I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. It was approved by Gavin Newsom. It reads, it's for infrastructure financing districts, formation, issuance, and the bonds. Now, I'm going to skip over all this to get to the meat of what this is about. It was about Howard Terminal. You would say, how do I know that? And all I have to do is scroll down. Is first of all, it reads the bill would require the city council of the city of Oakland to initiate proceedings for the formation of the district by adoption resolution of intent to establish the district that, among other things, directs the preparation of an infrastructure financing plan. The bill will require the infrastructure financing plan to include a provision for the division of taxes, but would not prohibit the division of taxes with respect to non-consenting affected tax agencies. In other words, what that means is if the county of Alameda says, hey, they don't want to be a part of it, then you can't include them. If BART says they don't want to be a part of it, which is another taxing agency, you can't include them. If AC Transit says the same thing, you can't include them. All right. It also calls for a district board composed of specific members to hold 3 notice public hearings on the infrastructure financing plan and to conduct a protest proceeding as provided. Now, what you do is you take that provision, and you have monthly meetings which allow you to surpass what the law calls for and act as a true authority structure like the Joint Powers Authority over the Coliseum. And it goes on to talk about the establishment of the district if fewer than 25% of the combined number of landowners and residents in the area file a protest. Well, folks, there was only one landowner, the Athletics, under consideration. the port giving it to the Athletics. So the Athletics would have been the only landowner, thus no objection. And so it goes on to write that about existing law and then the government code and limitations. It recognizes that California is facing affordable housing crisis, and it says that therefore the legislature is intending to provide the city of Oakland with additional latitude within the framework of the laws governing what are called IFDs to create and operate an IFD in a manner that optimizes its financial options. And here's where we get to Howard Terminal, folks. To facilitate the construction of much needed public facilities and affordable housing meeting the stated goals of community-wide significance, the city may wish to establish an IFD at Howard Terminal or another location. This will spur private investment and provide additional dollars to support development and revitalization of urbanized areas that include housing for all income levels with access to public transit, goods, services, and economic opportunities. In order to adopt the provisions of Chapter 2.8, commencing with Section 53395 of Part 1 of Division 2 of Title 5 of the Government Code relating to infrastructure financing districts and to the unique circumstances within the city, a special act, this one, is necessary. This is we get to F. It is the intent of the California legislature that this district does not interfere or override the authority of the State Lands Commission or the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission, which is why you had to go to them for approval, right? And so the section 53395.82 is added to the government code to read, this section applies only to the city of Oakland and any infrastructure financing district proposed by the city of Oakland as described in this section. And then it goes on to allow the use of tax increment revenues. And it reads that the city of Oakland will provide community-wide benefits. And it has the definitions of what a forwarded taxing agency is, base year, which lays out the calculations for using base year assessed value, city council, debt, district board, local education agencies, Oakland, meaning the city of Oakland, project area, and an area defined within a district, public facilities. And then it goes on to explain a district may finance the design, purchase, and this is where you really need to hone on this, construction, expansion, improvement, seismic retrofit, or rehabilitation of any real or tangible property with an estimated useful life of 15 years or longer, as described in this chapter. And the facilities, get this, read this, need not be physically located within the boundaries of the district. All right? All right. However, any facilities financed outside a district should have a tangible connection to the work of the district. Okay? As detailed in the infrastructure financing plan. And it continues to read that it should not apply that's up to the district, but the district should only finance public facilities of community-wide significance that provide significant benefits to the district or the surrounding community. All right, now so let's go back here real quick. And it talks about what the district can finance. All right, and it says it can finance construction, expansion, improvement, seismic retrofit, or rehabilitation of any real or tangible property with an estimated useful life of 15 years or longer described, and that the facilities need to be located within the boundaries of the district. That includes a lot. And that means that the facilities could be included in East Oakland, okay? It means that if you're talking about affordable housing, if you're talking about highways and roadways, all that could be financed in other areas of the city with this money. And lest you say Zinni doesn't specifically say that, my response to you is, well, let me show you something, okay? And it then goes on to read, as we scroll down here, okay? It reads that in addition, and this is where I want you to pay attention, folks, to any other project authorized by this chapter, a district formed pursuant to this section may finance any of the following: highways, interchanges, ramps, and bridges, arterial streets, parking facilities, and transit facilities, okay? What that means, folks, is very simple. It means that there should not, if the city was reading this, fairly, if they were implementing this fairly and rightly with respect to the athletics, and I want you to pay attention to my face, okay, when I say this, because what I'm about to say is explosive. If the city were doing this right, in fairness to the athletics, then the city would have said, hey, look, we can take the tax increment revenue that we've identified all 45 years, a proposed $800 million bond issue, and we can finance the off-site infrastructure improvements. Because off-site means what? Off Howard Terminal, which is just 55 acres. Instead, the city was trying to negotiate to make the A's pay for something that the city, if it were reading the legislation, would know it was responsible for being able to pay for through the Public Financing Authority. All right. All right. As noted in the never written infrastructure financing plan. Now, do you see why I'm explaining to you why the Athletics walked away? Because the city was selling them a bill of goods. The city was not playing honest. And I'm saying this in full recognition of the implications of my words with the Athletics as per SB 293 Skinner. Dave Cobble on my show several times said that he wanted to use SB 293 Skinner, and no wonder. He went through a considerable amount of legislative work to get it passed. But to have it passed, and then for the city to not implement it, and then to try to force the Athletics to pay costs that Dave knew, and I knew, and others who anybody reading legislation knows, including yourself, allow the city of Oakland to pay for is criminal. All right? It is absolutely bad that A's fans have hung the Athletics out to dry, or trying to, for walking away without understanding the details of why they were walking away, or listening to people who have no intention of going into the details regarding this, because those people, some of them talking right now, think you don't know enough to care, that you are not smart enough to absorb what I'm telling you, which is the reverse for me. I assume everybody listening to this is extremely intelligent, more so than me, to know this. And some of you really are. Okay. Some of you are in the business. All right. So you know, and I know now, if you don't know it, you know it now, that the city was not being an honest broker with the Athletics. You understand? The city was not being an honest broker with the Athletics. I repeat, the city of Oakland was not being an honest broker with the Athletics. Let me continue here regarding SB 293 Skinner and what it says. It says also that you can also finance sewage treatment and water reclamation plants, interceptor pipes, facilities for the collection and treatment of water for urban uses, flood control levees and dams, retention bases and drainage channels, child care facilities, libraries, parks, recreational facilities, and open space, facilities for the transfer and disposal of solid waste, including transfer stations and vehicles, brownfield restoration and other environmental mitigation, the development of projects on a former military base, provided that the projects are consistent with the Military Base Authority reuse plan and are approved by the Military Base Reuse Authority if applicable. What this means, you would say, why is that there? Well, West Oakland includes the Oakland Army Base, and there is a plan that was launched in California Capital Investment Group, was hired by the city to launch that plan for the reuse of the former Oakland Army Base. This refers to that indirectly and calls for the ability for some of that money to be used toward the rehabilitation of the former Oakland Army Base, although that was actually never, well, it was to some degree addressed in the community benefits plan, but that's another story. Then it goes on to say the repayment of the transfer of funds to a military base, the acquisition, construction, or rehabilitation of housing, whether publicly or privately owned, for very low income households and persons and families with low and moderate income, as those terms are defined in sections 50105 and 593, respectively, of the California Health and Safety Code for rent or purchase. Acquisition, construction, or repair of industrial structures for private use. Transit priority projects. If the State of Air Resources Board has accepted a metropolitan planning organization determination that the sustainable community strategy would, if implemented, achieve the greenhouse gas emission targets, projects that implement a sustainable community strategy would be paid for here. Projects that enable communities to adopt impacts of climate change, including higher average temperatures, decreased air and water, spread of infectious diseases, sea level rise, which is really why this was done from the athletics perspective, talking about the raison d'etre for SB 293 Skinner. Port or harbor infrastructure, the acquisition, construction, or improvement of broadband internet access services as defined by section 53167. Remediation of hazardous materials in, on, under, or around any tangible property, seismic and life safety improvements, rehabilitation, architectural rehabilitation of those buildings on the National Register of Historic Places, structural repairs and improvements to piers, seawalls, and wharves, removal of bay fill, stormwater management facilities, other repairs and improvements to public facilities, planning design work. That's a huge list, folks. And then it also calls reimbursement payments to be made to the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank, as well as improvements which may be publicly owned to protect against potential sea level rise. Then it confines fire stations as well. Okay, so that's the whole list, and it is a substantial list. And I want you to understand now, and I believe that you do, that this is much larger a project than Las Vegas. The bond issue for Las Vegas is only $120 million. That's it. The tax credits are at the A's risk. In other words, the A's have to, first of all, be levied the tax, then file the application for the payback of the tax before anything can happen. There's no risk to the county. The county can survive. In fact, arguably would thrive a little bit more but to a cap of 380 million, if the tax credits, not 380 million, but actually less than that, rather 220 million, if the tax credits were not applied for, okay? But the real risk to the county is 120 million with interest spread over a 30-year period of collection, all right, which adds up to a bond cost, and assuming a 3.5% interest rate of 202 million, but I haven't seen their interest rate yet, but from what I'm hearing regarding the numbers of a non-level debt service, in other words, non-level is meaning you pay a little bit up front, a little more at the back end, but that's looking like it's going to be about $240 million, still well within the realm of what they can capture and pay for from revenues just from ticket sales alone, period, all right? And so point is that what these claims that the Athletics were running away from the city of Oakland to get more money from Las Vegas, thumbs down. That was not the case. But what is the case, and I think is what really is important to understand, is what the A's don't have to do in the Las Vegas case, as presented by the diagram that Mike Jacobs and company have put out in their newsletter, and is expressed right here. Okay, now, first of all, one thing has to be pointed out, that because the Athletics were dying to build at Howard Terminal on the waterfront of Oakland, they opened themselves up to scrutiny by BCDC, the Bay Conservation Development Commission, and that added, and the State Lands Commission to a lesser extent, but actually the State Lands Commission, period. That really caused this list of responsibilities to be expanded and made the EIR issue that much more complicated. My point is, had the Athletics chosen to build at the Coliseum, the process would have been less. There would have been fewer numbers by about 4 steps of this process, okay? But I'm not criticizing why they chose Howard Terminal. I understood it because they wanted to have the East Bay equivalent of what the Giants had with Oracle Park, and yet quite literally be able to thumb their nose right at Oracle Park from Howard Terminal, which technically you can do. And of course, the Giants can do it to Howard Terminal. If you go over to what is now called, of course, Oracle Park. But if you go up to the third deck of the first base line and go to the extreme water edge area, you can see right over to Oakland, right over where our Howard Terminal is. And so technically, if you have powerful telescopes, you can actually thumb nose somebody and, back and forth, right? That's really what the Giants wanted. It was a development rivalry, but with great expensive results in having the ability to access and gain, in a good economy, gigantic naming rights results. I argued at the time to a tune of almost $2 billion. Now, where did I get that from? Chase Center and what the Warriors did at Chase Center on the waterfront, just down the street, if you will, in Mission Bay, right near where the Giants play. That's where I got that from. And so the idea that John Fisher and Dave Cobble were trying to take advantage of was that waterfront exposure. It's not that the Coliseum itself couldn't gain great naming rights deals, because it's just how you can market both the field and the stadium. And plus, it'll be a brand new facility. It's next to the airport, right off the freeway. The visibility is tremendous. So one can get comparable gains from it. But the main problem that Dave Cobble saw in particular and expressed was twofold. First of all, I remember the first time that we talked about a stadium when he was named president, he said that he would have to build a $400 million table at the Coliseum. Well, ironically, you have to do almost that at Howard Terminal, because it doesn't matter whether you go to Howard Terminal or the Coliseum, you still have the sea level rise problem. But there's less land, 55 acres versus 100 acres plus, where you have to fix that problem in the Howard Terminal case. In the case of the Coliseum, you're talking about 2 freeway interchanges and a significant chunk of the East Bay that actually has to be readjusted, because about half the East Bay is projected to be impacted by future sea level rise to the tune of 72 inches. Okay, 72 inches. Let me read your comments. Hey, Miles says, so, do you think the city of Oakland doesn't listen to you on purpose? Seems like they don't care. I don't care. I mean, why is it so important, at that point? It's not, my question is not so much that anybody listens to me. I want this on the record. Okay? I'm going to be very blunt with you. There are a lot of stupid people out there. So it's not a matter of someone listening to me. It's a matter of someone being interested enough and caring enough to say, hey, look, this information's out there. Check this out. All right? For a whole host of reasons, what I say is not popular. Part of it is because I'm not seeking to be popular. I'm seeking to get the truth out. The other part of it is, frankly speaking, there are people who don't like when an African-American male speaks from an authoritative place and does something that even some people who are black think a white person should do. And I'm being very blunt with you about something that people don't want to hear. But to this day, it is true. All right? The bottom line is this. If you want this problem to be solved, if you really care about the athletics, then you'll care that this is done right, because it wasn't. You don't put the athletics in a situation where you say, hey, we love you, and stick with this problem and just live with it. For how long? All right? It has gone on and 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 on. This has gone on It's just gotten worse. We didn't have a sea level rise problem 10 years ago. Now we have it. Things are changing. You have to adjust. Has the city adjusted? No, at all. Are there studies out there to show it how to adjust? Is there a sea level rise plan that includes Howard Terminal? Yes. Has it been financed for implementation by the city council? No, it has not been. Okay? So I resent that people come on my show and ask, why aren't anyone listening to me? My question to you is, why aren't you telling them about this information? Why aren't you getting them to listen to you? And why do you have to play to a crowd that quite obviously isn't working on the Athletics, best interest? If they were, the Athletics wouldn't have left. The A's left for a reason, and that's what you have to wrap your mind around. The A's left for a reason. I did my bit to help the Athletics. I laid the groundwork for tax increment financing. Dave Cobble was convinced public money couldn't be used. He did not know about the 2010 Gruen and Gruen study, did you? About the plans for ballpark at Jack London and the tax increment calculations that were done in 2010 by Gruen and Gruen for the Let's Go Oakland group. Do you realize how many groups have been formed regarding saving the A's? There was Choose or Lose the A's, which I was involved in 2006. And there was, which I actually put up a video about that not too long ago. And but I'll do it just for grin so you can see the players, that were involved back then. And you may be one of them watching right now. But this has gone on for a long time. And of course, there was, and I showed this the other day, the effort, the original Coliseum City effort by the late Frank Dobson, the late Bob Lesty, and thank goodness still alive with us, Steve Lowe, which was then taken by Larry Reed to create Coliseum City, put out the RFP for it, okay? That was in 2009. And during that year, Major League Baseball is actually considering contracting, all right, contracting the Athletics. 2009. Why? Because they were not making enough money. It's not that they can't, but it's the ongoing struggles between the people who owned the Athletics, whoever they were at the time, Lou Wolf, and the city itself. But what's the common denominator? It's a city of Oakland that does not want to be accommodating to an organization strictly because it perceives that organization as ran by billionaire white guys. That's the reason, folks. Is that a good reason? No, it's racist. Okay? It really is. All right? Just because a person has money doesn't mean they have to be used or you have to figure out how to fleece them. But that's the approach the city of Oakland has today. And for example, let's take with affordable housing. When I worked for the Oakland Redevelopment Agency, we thought of affordable housing as gap financing. In other words, here's the amount of rent you need to charge in order for your rents to outpace your expensive costs to build a multifamily structure, right? What he says we will lower that and we'll pay the difference to you in a subsidy, gap financing, right? You know what the city council today want to do? They want you as the builder to pay for the affordable housing outright. To which, what are you going to do? You're going to figure out how to use substandard material, cut costs, all kinds of things, because the city is not going to aid you in building by allowing you to build a top-notch facility, but lowering the cost so that, regular good old people can live in it, right? No, not at all. That's the new Oakland. And that's why the new Oakland fails. All right? Because it's too politically motivated by people who have ideas about somebody and characterize them as a billionaire, which means in the city's mind, you as a billionaire can never lose money. You as a billionaire don't need the city's help. All right? But let me explain how ridiculously stupid that is. Because if the city puts money in, then it has the right to demand that you as the developer pay a living wage, hire people of color, conduct activities in a way that is not sexist. All right? Because you, the government, have skin in the game. So when people give up that, when they talk about letting the billionaire pay, you should look at them as if they're stupid. You hear me? Because you're asking for your government, where your taxes go, where your efforts to vote go, take themselves out of the process because you have ideas about a billionaire. But that's where we've come to, folks. And that's why we have so many examples nationwide of bad legislation. All right? At a time when anybody, yourself, me, or anybody can be a billionaire because the internet allows the construction of businesses to scale rapidly. All right? So he says, Oakland government wants to be East SF. Apparently they don't want to fit in. Miles says, will the city of Oakland ever get it right? I honestly don't know. And my thought is, frankly, that at this point I'd have to say no. Because it doesn't show the will. The city of Oakland doesn't do what I said it needed to do during the Raiders issue. Show the will and the initiative to complete big projects. Again, show the will and the initiative to complete big projects. It didn't do that with the Warriors second time. We did it once before, several times before, with the construction of the original Coliseum, with the construction of the arena in '98. New, don't let that rehabilitation jazz fool you. New for the Warriors, it took 2 years. Okay, so we've done it, but we did it under a council manager form of government where public officials had more power, where they could count on long-term job stability, okay? Where the city administrator had their job for an average of about 5 years as opposed to 2 years, all right? We had a better structure. But Oaklanders were clamoring for strong mayor, we want somebody accountable. Jerry Brown used that. Elihu tried it but didn't get it. And I understood what it was about, and I was in favor of it in both instances. But it's time to admit that it doesn't work. You can be for something, then try and say, you know what? This isn't working out. We have had Jerry Brown, and the law was redesigned for him, Ron Delms, rest in peace, Gene Kwan, Ribby Schaff, and now Shang Tao. We've had 6 bites at the strong mayor apple, and what has happened along with each successive bite at that apple, we become more politicized. We believe in each successive bite has caused us to do what? Lose professional sports organizations. And take sports out of the picture, but still staying within the meetings, incentives, conventions, and entertainment industry. Do we have a convention center? No. We have only arguably the Fox Theater to show and the Paramount to show for live entertainment. Do we have anything in terms of playhouses? No. Does Oakland care to revive its once thriving in the 1920s arts scene for theater? No. It leaves it to San Francisco. There's a lot of leaving it to San Francisco mentality that causes Oakland to not do a thing. I've lived it. It affected me trying to bring the Super Bowl to Oakland because Oaklanders, including those being paid by the city, didn't believe we could even get to the finals. I got us to the finals. All right. Only to have an $80,000 grant that the city was going to give to me for my sports commission. They said I couldn't get federal approval to do in a timely fashion. I got it in 4 months rather than 2 years. Got that grant, but Jerry Brown didn't like that I referred to him as not being comfortable with a smart black guy in an email to my board. And so he fired me, which is illegal to do in California law. You cannot fire somebody for an accusation of racism. But that's what he did. That was written up and documented by Chip Johnson in the Chronicle in the year 2000. All right. And Chip thought it was some kind of funny joke. It was not a joke, folks. All right. And Chip is black. Okay. So, and he found himself later apologizing for that too, because that was wrong. But imagine, let's just turn the dial. Imagine an alternative universe if we were not only 1 of 3 finalists, but the city signed the contract for the NFL, that we won. How different would that have been for the city? How different would it have been for me or for my sports commission if they just let me have the 80,000? I didn't even see it coming. It was a gift because they were shocked. But Oakland does things not just to me, but to a number of people, not just to me. All right. I'm just the one that has a bigger mouthpiece than others who just chosen to go on with their lives and take it. I'm not taking that crap. Oakland has got to stop. So you ask me what it will take to make Oakland change? That's a good question. I'm pointing out the problem so that this is on record for a long, 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 long time beyond me. That's my objective. It's not a matter of listening to me. It's a matter of having it out there so that it only takes one person to start asking questions. Which means right now you have no good journalists, because a good journalist would have been all over this a long time ago. There are no good journalists in the Bay Area. I'm sorry. That includes people I consider friends. Because a true journalist would have been all over this a long time ago. You know it, and I know it. All right? It says, will Nevada approve this without special session? Time will tell. We'll see. How to become a millionaire. Start off being a billionaire investing in Oakland. Oprah says, Vegas, have it now. Oakland had it yesterday. Right. And that's what's happening. And so now we're at almost an hour. And, if you have any other questions, let me know. Vegas Mark says, Oakland government needs an economic cultural change, which can take a couple of generations. Yeah, unfortunately. Now, can it be done and turned around? Here's the answer. It can, because the legislation is there. I'm not talking about just SB 293 Skinner, but I'm talking about the fact that the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District legislation allows for the quick marshaling up of monies to establish, live, work in San Francisco context or Oakland, talking about trying to get people downtown, right? Well, let them live downtown. Let them do the live work thing. Make that the popular type of use. We don't do that right now. It's like it's either live or work, or hey, work downtown, establish offices, come back into the office, right? What if they're one and the same? Changes the equation, doesn't it? Okay. So my point is, we have the ability to turn this around quickly. We don't have the will. And the question is, I don't have the answer. How bad does it have to get before we actually get the will? And does it take another generation? And that's a good question. I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope it doesn't take another generation. But the way things are going right now, it took a generation of this to get us into this mess. All right. Live long and prosper, everybody, in your world. And thank you for watching. And please share this around. And if you have a disagreement, hey, look, I'm open for debate. Come on the show. But the people like, for example, was it Hal the hot dog guy, I think, puts out these ideas that, the old idea about stadiums not being good for economic development, complete BS. All right. Quoting economic studies that forget that the internet exists and that people watch sports on television, and therefore the niceties of being in the host city wherever that sport is presented are shown to you ad infinitum again and again and again. All that is part of the economic impact. Don't think it's not. It helped, among other things, Indianapolis go from, a cowpoke city to what it is today, a major city. Sports matters. Thanks a lot, folks. See ya.